Thank you. Now, I am a writer. I'm not a business person, so in a sense I'm here illegitimately. And the best thing I think I can do, I can't tell you how to do what you do. All I can do is tell you a little bit about how I do what I do, and I think there is a very strong connection. And in order to bring that out, the first thing I want to do is to tell you a couple of examples, give you some detail over how I set about constructing stories. I've actually come, last night in London was the world premiere of the film of Les Miserables. I don't know if any of you have encountered this extraordinary phenomenon, Les Miserables. It's a stage show, a musical, created by Cameron Mackintosh, two French authors. This show has been seen by 65 million people worldwide. It's made $3.5 billion before it's ever got anywhere near a film. For 27 years, this perfect story has been succeeding. I was asked to turn it into a movie. That was my job, to take this story and craft it so it could be made as a movie. That movie premiered last night, and I was there in Leicester Square, and I mean, I've seen it before. It is an astonishing film, and I predict to you, and I may well eat my words, but come February, I think it's going to get all the Oscars. It is so powerful. Now, what I did to this work, which is not my work, was look at ways of creating something that was, if possible, even better. Although, to be honest, my instructions were, don't screw it up. Turn this into a movie that works. Some of you may have seen The Phantom of the Opera, the Andrew Lloyd Webber show. That was made into a movie. The movie failed. It was not a good movie. So it is easy to screw up making a movie out of a show. What I did was, I looked at each of the characters and said to myself, do we understand why each character does what they do, and do we believe that they're doing what I would do if I was in those circumstances? Now, in the case of Les Miserables, my work is extremely detailed and almost invisible, because everything I did was subsequently turned into sung lyrics and is sung in the show. And you will hear some people say, why does it need a screenwriter? There's no dialogue. But that is a statement of ignorance. Screenwriters don't write dialogue. Screenwriters write stories. What I do is I create structure. So it's very relevant to the theme of the conference you've had in the last couple of days. And in order to explain how that works, I'll use Gladiator as an example, because some of you will have seen Gladiator and will be familiar with it. I worked on this, I mean, it's a long time ago now, it's 12 years ago. When I came on board on Gladiator, it was already about to be shot. They had a script, but the cast, led by Russell Crowe, walked out of a script reading. They said, if this is all you've done with the script, we're off. We don't think this is any good. So I was brought in as a kind of emergency writer to solve the problems. And I looked at the script, and this was a story of a very successful soldier and fighter who was abused, his wife was killed, his son was killed by the bad guy, and he vows revenge. He himself is thrown into slavery, he becomes a gladiator, he rises up through the ranks, and his one aim in life is to kill the emperor, the guy who's done this bad thing to him, and in the end he does. So what I received was a revenge story. Now, I don't know about you, revenge stories are good. Some of the best, I mean, Count of Monte Cristo is a revenge story. I don't like stories about people who kill. I'm not actually interested in somebody whose one achievement is to kill somebody. I like stories about people who love somebody, because that's how I work. So I said to the team, I'm going to rewrite this film for you, and I'm going to take your soldier, fighter, killer, and turn him into a loving husband, a loving father, a farmer, somebody who wants to go home to his farm, love his wife, raise his kid, because I can identify with that. And therefore, this is a guy who, yes, he's a soldier, yes, he's a general, yes, he's good at that, but what the audience must know from the word go is that's not his soul, that's just the job he does. What he really wants is to be a loving father. So the film starts with a hand passing over a field of corn. This is a man who, I mean, it's corny, as we say in English. This is a man who notices natural things. He walks, stops, and he looks up and he sees a bird. Now you may say, what's the point of that? The point is, I wanted to establish before you saw any military action at all that this is a man whose heart is elsewhere. He comes round a corner after these two little moments, and there's an enormous Roman army. Suddenly we're into a battle. I then inserted into the battle, as he's riding with all his troops through the trees to attack the Germanic tribes, he says to his people, don't worry if suddenly you find you're in green fields. You've died, and you're in the next life, you're in the afterlife. Because what I realized I had to do with this film was create a completely different character journey for this guy, the character journey of a lover. Now, who does he love? He's got a wife. He loves his wife. Unfortunately, his wife is going to be killed. What do you do then? I mean, I guess you could say, well, he could marry again, you know, why not? But what I thought was, no, what we'll do is we'll create an afterlife, we'll have him believe in an afterlife, which, you know, throughout history, most people have believed in an afterlife. And what motivates him is the desire to return to his wife and his child in the next life. So immediately, you have a character who's got a goal that is greater than killing the bad emperor. He has to kill the bad emperor. There's got to be lots of nice biffing and bashing and fighting, but it's all aimed at a greater good. And that's what I wrote into the script in many, many ways, and as a result, that film became what in Hollywood they call a four-quadrant movie. The four quadrants are young males, older males, young females, and older females. There are very few movies that hit all four quadrants. Titanic did that. Avatar did that. I think Les Miserables, the film I've just finished, is going to do that. If you can make a four-quadrant movie, you will make $1 billion, which is what happened with Gladiator. And I think to do that, it's not good enough to have people fighting each other. You've got to have something that touches an emotion at a deeper level. Another example of story construction. I'm working on what I finished, the Mandela movie. This will come out next year. It's called Mandela: Long Walk to Freedom because it's based on his autobiography. This is a story, we all know the amazing achievement of this man who, not single-handedly, but he was the dominant force, created a revolution that was without a war. It's the only one in history where a regime has surrendered power without being forced to at the point of a gun. And he did that through his moral stature. So part of the story is tracing a man through his early politics to his decision not to be a warring revolutionary, but to be somebody who forgives. Fine. That's one of the threads. But actually, in story terms, that's a very difficult story to tell. It's a kind of intellectual idea. So I looked at his story and I realized that built into the real-life experience of Nelson Mandela was the perfect dramatic construction, which is his love for Winnie. He fell in love with this very beautiful, naive, 19-year-old girl. They were together for 2 years. Then he was in prison for 27 years. And all the time he was in prison, he loved her. He had his picture in prison with him. He believed she was the girl he had married and adored. But she wasn't, because she was not in prison. She was outside fighting for the freedom movement, and she was suffering. She was tortured, she was imprisoned, her children were abused. So Winnie develops over this period of time an enormous hatred, anger against the white apartheid regime, at the very same time that Nelson Mandela is going in the opposite direction. And he is developing love and compassion, a belief in forgiveness, a realization that we can't seek revenge for the wrongs of the past if we want to build a new society. So when he came out of prison, two things are happening simultaneously, and this is, I think, really good storytelling. Two things are happening. One is he's winning. Gradually, the white regime is realizing they must deal with him, they must do more than deal with him. Eventually, they must give power to him, and he becomes president. He wins. It's a huge victory. It's a global victory. At the same time, he's discovering his wife thinks he's an impotent old man who she no longer sympathizes with at all. This dream he's had throughout his imprisonment is shattered, and he can't believe what he's experiencing, but he has to believe it. And little by little, he realizes his marriage is dead, his love is dead. And he says in my film, he didn't actually say this in real life, but I've given him these words, "Their only victory over me has been what they did to my wife." I find that extremely moving. Now, why? Why wouldn't it be much better if he'd come out of prison and she'd loved him and they were happy? What's wrong with that? The answer is, we all know that life is a mess. Our actual experience is that it's tough to make love affairs work. It's tough to create revolutions that work. And the one element that must exist in any story is credibility. You've got to believe those characters. If you don't believe those characters, the whole thing doesn't work. So what is it, this credibility? What's happening? I think it's very simple. You're matching your own experience against their experience all the time. You're saying to yourself, yes, that's how I would behave under those circumstances. Yes, that's how life is. And the people we admire aren't the people who win, the people who become successful. We might admire them in a rather simple way, but the people we really admire are the people who achieve things against the mess and the suffering and the cruelty and the injustice of life. Because that is our actual experience. Now, if that's true, it's very interesting, because if the core of all storytelling is, as I believe it to be, character, character is at the core. If the core of any successful story is a character that you identify with and you love, you want to go on their journey with them, otherwise why are you bothering? Why sit through 2 hours of a movie? Why read a book? You want what that character wants. You then need to believe that everything they get, they have legitimately earned. Very important. There are quite a lot of movies where the ending doesn't satisfy you. And you say, why is it that when I came out of that, it didn't feel good? And the answer almost certainly is you did not feel that character earned the happy ending. And we are talking about happy endings. I do believe all stories need happy endings. Happy endings doesn't mean that everybody lives happily ever after. Happy ending could be death. It could be destruction. But the point when I say it's a happy ending is the ending gives meaning to the story. And that is the drive we all have in our life, which is to make our life meaningful. Actually, in honest truth, our life is not meaningful. Things happen in a random way. You might be a healthy, loving, decent human being, and you get cancer and you die. There's no meaning to that. You didn't deserve it. It just happens. So we tell each other stories all the time as a fight against that, because we desperately want to feel that there is meaning. Now, what I'm talking about here, underlying this question of meaning and this question of character, I'm really talking about truth. I'm talking about our perception of truth. all the time, people are sort of testing everything they receive against an inner sense of, is it true? And this is the point at which I think what I do, writing made-up stories, overlaps what you do, and in fact what we all do. Because all of us are telling a story of ourselves. Some of you, for business purposes, are telling a story. You're creating a story every time you want somebody to do what you want. Every time you want to sell a product, to sell services, essentially, you're creating a story, and the story goes, this thing that I've got is going to make your life better. It's going to make you happier, it's going to fulfill you. I've got something you want. Fine. I mean, that's the basis of all transactions. But too many people seem to me to think of business in terms of a financial measurement. In other words, you can tell a business is successful if the bottom line is working out correctly and more money is coming in than is going out, therefore it's successful. And people focus themselves too much on that. Now, I may be quite wrong about that, by the way. You will know over the last couple of days, everything you've been talking about, you've probably talked about very different things. But my perception is, in our culture, we talk too much about financial measurements, because really, you're not dealing in money. You're dealing in people. That is the currency of all human interactions. You are a person dealing with people, convincing them, making them believe you, making them do what you want, if you want, and there are various ways you can handle that interaction with other people. You can handle it cynically. You can say to yourself, all that matters is that I make these people give me the money I want, do the thing I want, give me the promotion I want. That's what matters. They are tools. They are means to my ends. There are people who work like that. I think it's a complete waste of time. I think that it's not just a waste of time, I think it's a waste of life. I would like to think that it's also a way to fail in business. Maybe I'm wrong. What I want to believe is that the way to succeed is not to treat people as means to your ends, but to treat people as ends in themselves. And that means the story that you create for the thing you do in your life has got to be honorable. So now I'm shifting to moral terms. And fundamentally, what drives me and what drives, I believe, all successful storytelling is a moral core. We are wanting the world to be good. We are wanting to do good. We are wanting to feel that we are valuable people, that what we do makes the world a better place. Whatever that is. To go to an absurd extreme, imagine you're a drug dealer. You're making a lot of money dealing heroin. What do you think? Now, it may be, maybe some of you know some heroin dealers, I don't know. It may be that the heroin dealer says to himself, I don't give a damn about these people, I just want their money. Maybe there are some heroin dealers like that. I would suggest that a successful heroin dealer does not say that. A successful heroin dealer says, you know what? Heroin gives you a fantastic feeling. I'm selling an enormous experience, and my heroin is clean, pure heroin. Other people sell rubbish stuff that'll poison you. I sell good stuff. I look after my customers. I'm a good heroin dealer. What I do is a transaction in which we both benefit. I'm sure that that's what they think. An arms dealer. I'm sure an arms dealer thinks the same thing. He doesn't think, how can I get a whole lot of guns and create mayhem and have people die so that I can get rich? The arms dealer says, people need guns. Of course they do, to defend themselves. How can they get those guns in the best possible way? Through me. I can make more peace in the world by selling them guns. Now, this is people deceiving themselves, of course. But the interesting thing is that they want to feel that they are doing good. And I think we should give an enormous amount of attention in anything that you do to this question of your moral position vis-à-vis your work. Because I think that's what makes a successful, to be cynical, a successful sell. If I was a marketing person, if I was an ad man, I would say, I cannot sell this product until I believe it myself. I just can't do that. And if I can't believe it myself, I am not going to go anywhere near it. And if you're in a job dealing in some product that you think is worthless and pointless, you have to get out. That's no life to lead. You have got to be authentic in your work because it's your life. There's nothing else happening. And if you're purely there saying, well, I've got to put food on the table, but I don't believe what I'm doing, I don't believe that that's going to work well at all. So my conviction is that even in this modern age, which I know it's like in Istanbul, but back in London, people have become very post-Christian, they're not very religious, people don't talk in these terms, but I think people are still instinctively driven by a moral force. So when I talk about whatever you do, head towards the happy ending, whatever your story is, it's offering a happy ending. That happy ending can't be fake. It can't be inauthentic. It's got to touch a profound truth in you, in your transaction, in the people you're dealing with. When I think of, in the Obama campaign recently, the presidential campaign, there was a very successful series of advertisements for the Obama campaign attacking Romney. They attacked Romney on the basis of his work for Bain Capital, if you remember. Romney had been part of this investment group that bought up companies and asset stripped them. And one of these most famous ads was called Stage. And all it consisted of was a worker talking. And he came on and he said, I used to work for a construction company that was bought by Bain Capital. After they bought the company, they asked us to build a stage like this. And we did that to the best of our ability. We're good construction workers. We built the stage. After we built it, we all stood on the stage, and Mr. Romney came out and said, you're all fired. And the man saying this meant every word of it. His emotional truth radiated out from the screen. And that made Romney hated by many people. And that is a moral story that has an effect. Give you another current example. Back in England, Starbucks, the great coffee company. I don't know how many Starbucks outlets there are in the United Kingdom, probably 1,000. Starbucks claims to make no money in the United Kingdom. They say, well, maybe we don't do our job very well. We have no profits, so you can't tax us. So they pay no tax, no corporate tax. It's not illegal what they do. What they're actually doing is they're doing some financial work so that, I don't understand it, but I think they pay tax in Luxembourg or somewhere like that. It's not illegal, but it's recently been in the headlines that they pay no tax. The result is devastating. There are people not going into Starbucks saying, I will not touch Starbucks coffee. Why? Because the story has gone bad. They feel, I don't want to associate myself with an immoral company, a company that doesn't pull its weight and do its job as a corporate citizen. I find this incredibly encouraging because it tells me that actually people do want to feel that the story is a good story and a true story. I believe in my business, in writing movies and in writing books, I have to work very, very hard to make people believe in the moral authenticity of the structure I create. When you tell your story, whether it's to your wife or husband about what you've done today, or whether it's in your business, or whether it's to customers, you have to work really hard for authenticity. Because I think that that quality of authenticity is enormously powerful. And the opposite, which is being fraudulent, manipulative, cynical, I just think you haven't a hope. So maybe this is, even as I say it, I think to myself, of course you all know all this. Why am I telling you this? But I feel it very strongly. I feel it underlies the success of successful movies and successful stories. And I want to champion it because, I'm a failed Christian. I was raised as a Roman Catholic and I've long ago stopped believing in God. So I don't have anything to sell on that front. All I know is I don't want my life to be lived in a world where the bad guys always win, where cheating always succeeds, where there is no justice. I want to believe that actually we're in a world where decent people know about goodness and care about it and want to be trusted and want to be trustworthy. And every single thing you do either adds to that feeling or takes away from it. And my suggestion to you is that everybody in business, wherever they are, particularly business that involves communication, as mine does, has an enormous power. Either we tell stories right, or we're doomed. What kind of world are we going to live in if we're just all animals in a jungle, fighting each other with no care for each other? So I'm sorry if that turned slightly sermonizing, but I do feel it very strongly, and I welcome the opportunity to say that. I'm actually going to stop now, Peter, because there may be, I don't know if anybody wants to throw up any questions very quickly before we move on to the next speaker, but I am very happy to answer. Yeah.
That would be great. That would be great. Could I have mic, please? Thank you. Any questions from anybody? That would be wonderful. We got a 2 minutes or so.
Does anybody want to stick up a hand and ask me anything, even if you just want to say what rubbish your films are? Yeah.
Did you think about writing a manuscript of making the film of Atatürk?
That's a very, very interesting question. I mean, it would make an amazing film, but of course a very controversial one. And I'm almost scared to go into, I mean, with what we see happening in Turkey today, it's so controversial, the whole history of the secularization of Turkey. I would be very scared that I'd be told, you are trying to prove that secularization is good, or you're trying to prove it's bad, or whatever. And with Mandela, that's safely kind of in the past. I have this, you tell me if I'm wrong, I have this strange feeling that Ataturk is very much with us still, you know, and it's a hot issue. So that would make me nervous. I wouldn't want a whole lot of people coming around and killing me.
Yes, but that will be a challenging topic for you.
If a good producer comes along and says, let's make a great Ataturk movie, I think it'd be fantastic.
Thank you.